For too long, people living in slum area, especially in developing countries like Indonesia, Thailand, or India, have been disenfranchised, discriminated, and deprioritized simply because they are from slum. They are uneducated, they are uncivilized, and they are easily painted as an individual with criminal tendency. It is enough for these slum people to be constantly failed by the government, and hence we propose that the government of developing countries should actively pursue slum tourism. Two arguments in my speech. Number one, why our proposal is critically important and why it provides the best solution for the problem exists in the slum area. Secondly, why our proposal gives the ability for people living in the slum area to redefine and reclaim the narrative attached to this area. Before getting to them, several clarification on our model. What do we mean by actively pursue? Firstly, government should financially incentivize the slum tourism. So we are willing to give direct cash assistance for people to start business in the slum area. We will give low interest loan for these people if the scale of the economy is quite big. Secondly, government will provide myriad of basic provision such as law enforcement provision like access to police, lawyer, surveillance scheme, etc. or health provision like hospitals, medical practitioners, etc. Thirdly, government will impose taxation policy for any businesses existing in the slum area, and it will be proportional to the scale of the businesses. Fourthly, government will ensure the priority of starting the businesses to individuals who are the original residents of this area. Enough for the clarification. First argument, why our proposal is critically important and why it provides the best solution for the problem exists. Firstly, we need to understand that the people who resides in slum area critically lacking the financial means to access basic necessities. The lack of these financial resources many times stems on the myriad of reasons. Firstly, people in slums are more likely than the other people living in other part of the city, lacking the access or even the incentive to access the education. As people living in the poverty, the highest in the hierarchy of their priority is to survive day-to-day life, which means you prioritize doing things that give you direct means to survive, like having a food to eat, having a place to sleep, etc. Hence, people in slum are mostly associated with jobs like beggar, street urchins, drug dealing, etc. because it can give them direct cash. In comparison to education, which you need at least high school graduate to get a chance, let alone securing to blue-collar jobs which even still pay them badly. This necessarily means that these are the people who cannot go out and compete with other people in a competitive globalizing labor market, and therefore they are locked in that particular slum. Secondly, this consequentially leads to less investment targeting these slum areas, primarily because of the undesirable labor pool for this corporation to utilize, which means they need to spend more time and fund to train or to equip these people with necessary skills for this corporation to function. Not to mention, due to the low economic prospect in the area, it is hard for this corporation to invest in stimulus scheme to improve the slum area due to very little prospect for the corporation gain or chances of the scheme to succeed. Thirdly, due to lack of education, economic prospect, etc., this subsequently limits their ability to access alternative economic opportunity outside of this slum area, simply because of transportation cost to commute to city and back and forth to slum area, or renting or buying housing in city area is too economically insurmountable for them, which this means the idea that people in slum can access or join the workforce elsewhere is just a fantasy for these people. Fourthly, not to mention, these slum areas are more often than not linked to criminal activity. People commit crime or involved in criminal gang mainly because they are in desperate situation, economically, politically, and socially. So, why pursuing slum tourism is the solution for these particular problems? Firstly, within it creates industry within the slum area. People in slum can access myriad of job opportunities made possible by the slum tourism, such as becoming tour guide, tour operator, small middle local entrepreneurs selling souvenirs, offering tour package, or providing accommodation options. This means we give job for these people and access to fulfill their necessity which otherwise would have not existed in status quo. It is important for people living in slum area to capitalize and claim this economic opportunity in order to give sense of ownership towards these people so they have incentive to protect and sustain this industry. Secondly, the increasing economic activity necessarily means the increasing prospect of investment and capital flow to these slum tourisms. Hence, the possibility for this type of tourism to expand their economic muscles and to gain more profit is considerably higher. This means more financial flexibility for people who live in slums. Not to mention, with the imposition of taxation, we are going to be able to redistribute the benefit gained from the slum industry back to people living in slum via the provision of electricity, clean water, essential infrastructure like road, schools, hospitals, etc. Thirdly, our proposal provides better framework to tackle crimes which for so long this slum area has been associated with. In our side, we give them means to survive, which means we make them less desperate economically and give them more access to socially function because they are no longer have to associate themselves with this criminal activity or criminal gang due to the economic opportunity we offer in our proposals. Our proposal also gives more incentive structure to not welcome this criminal activity to penetrate the slum anymore. Fourthly, our proposal creates government impetus to deploy more law enforcement schemes like police, surveillance mechanism, etc. Because when you welcome a lot of tourists, especially foreign tourists, it is your interest to ensure the safety of people who come to your country and your area because simply it is going to be very bad publicity for your country if your slum industry is associated with story of tourists getting attacked, getting robbed, or hurt by people from the slum area. Not to mention, many slums facing hygiene or health problem due to the clogged sewer or bad waste management. With our proposal, this increases government investment in the form of stricter health protocols, more robust waste management, or probably more hospital, so government can deploy more health practitioners like nurses and doctors to be there. The idea is there will be the framework to provide more proper and safer environment for both people living in slum area and the prospective visitor which will exist in our side, ladies and gentlemen. Team opposition might argue that our proposal is going to affect the preservation of natural ecology or the natural aesthetics in the slum area. We have several reasons why this is not a problem. Firstly, we can have governmental regulation on that, so that's not an impediment to our proposal. Secondly, we argue to you that it is the economic interest of the tourism agency to preserve the natural ecology or aesthetics of the slum area, because if those can attract more tourists to visit the area, then they won't do any business scheme that aims to threaten the natural ecology and aesthetics of the slum area. Thirdly, but more importantly, most slum area in the world don't exist in natural ecology or have such distinctive aesthetics. If you look at the contrary, like in Bangkok for example, these slum areas are surrounded by pile of trash or broken cars, and this is the condition faced by many slums. So if they live in such a pristine and beautiful place, why would they live in a poverty and such struggle? Because obviously it should be a hot tourist spot to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. So all in all, my first argument have proven to you why this is important, why our proposal is the solution. Secondly, why our proposal gives ability for people living in slum area to redefine and reclaim the narrative attached to the slum area. Ladies and gentlemen, poverty is not only about material deprivation, but also deprivation of agency. Right now, our understanding of slum is limited to what we see on media, which heavily romanticize poverty, like, oh, it is okay to be poor as long as we have love, as long as we have each other, etc. These are the things that you see in the media. We agree to some extent that there are some portrayals by NGOs in media who go into this slum and they interview these people, but this is insufficient for two reasons. Firstly, the airtime is very expensive because it is X dollar per X second. This is necessarily means the type of airtime or the type of things that will be portrayed on television or media will be very limited. But secondly, the things you see on media, on Facebook, merely only snapshots of poverty, not exactly what poverty needs per se, meaning you only see like a picture of child begging in that photo, but you don't necessarily see the community in which these kids live in, how they struggle there, how the fact that they are not lazy. They are in fact hardworking individuals who work really hard in a world where the card is stacked against them. So you give them the power to convey the real and unfiltered narrative on what it means to live in poverty in slum area and how people living outside of the slum should perceive these individuals and understanding what kind of help and support they actually need. More importantly, this is very important because this narrative comes necessarily from the people living in slum so they can reclaim the perception and the narrative exists in this area, ladies and gentlemen. So what we have proven to you in today's debate. Firstly, we've proven to you why a proposal is critically important and why it provides solution. And lastly, more importantly, why we think that our proposal gives the ability for people living in slum area to redefine and reclaim the narrative attached to these places. Therefore, for all those reasons, we beg you to propose.